Hello everyone, welcome to the online lecture series on Verilog HDL. So in the previous session, we had discussed on syllabus overview, what actually you are going to learn from this particular course. So from today's session onwards, we shall start off with the syllabus, and the first topic what we are going to cover is evolution of CAD and then emergence of HDLs. From this particular class, a student will be able to explain the evolution of CADs, like CAD in the sense computer aided design, and a student will be able to explain the emergence of HDLs. So coming to the evolution of computer aided design, so when actually it got started, so it started way back in 1940s. As you can say, it all started with this. So you might be thinking, what is this particular thing, right? So this is your first transistor. You might have studied BJTs, MOSFETs in your first semester itself in basic electronics, right? And you might have studied in electronic devices circuits. But if you look at this, this is the first made transistor, right? So as you can see, this is not smaller in size, it is quite huge, right? As you can see, it is quite huge. So when it got invented in 1948 at Bell Laboratories in USA. Okay, so who are the people who invented this particular thing? So these are the three people, okay, who invented the transistor. Okay, as you can see here, so the three people who invented this transistor is John Bardeen, William Shockley, and Walter Brattain. So as you can see, this guy what you are having over here, he is John Bardeen, and this guy is William Shockley, and this is Walter Brattain. Okay, so by invent of this particular transistor, as you might have seen, okay, all the things in the electronics is made up of transistors. So transistors have played us a very huge role by bringing on these electronic devices into the current scenarios, right? So after this, people started thinking on this BJTs, so they tried to integrate the things. Okay, so as you can see in the previous slide, here you can see this is the first transistor, the only one single transistor. But what people did, why can't we put some more transistor in a single device? So they started integrating these transistors into a single device, and they called it as what? Integrated circuit. So this is the first integrated circuit which has been developed. Okay, and this integrated circuit has been developed by Jack Kilby. Okay, so and again they started doing researches. So what extra we can do, and then they came up with what? And again they invented MOSFETs. First they invented transistor. After that they started integrating the devices, integrating the transistors, and then they invented MOSFET. Once the MOSFET came into existence, once they invented, they came to know that it can be shrink. The device can be shrink. So this particular thing was observed by a famous scientist who invented Intel, is this person. So what actually he said? So he said that the number of transistors can be packed into a given unit of space will double every 2 years. What actually he said? He said that suppose if I'm having I'm having a something like this. Okay, so at this moment of time, I can integrate, let me consider that I can integrate 10 transistors into this particular chip. Okay, after 18 months I should be able to integrate 20 number of transistors. As of this year, as of this particular time, as we said that it can be, we can integrate only 10 number of transistors, but that count has to be doubled after 2 years. Okay, this became what, this became a standard law for semiconductor industries, and then they started integrating the things using Moore's law, and then they started sticking on to it. Okay, so as you can see, this is how the current electronics industry has been evolved by taking into the consideration of Moore's law. As you can see over here, this is where our first microprocessor came. So as you can see, this is in terms of 1970s. In 1970, Intel 4004, and then you can see here Intel 408008, and then goes on increasing. Okay, as you can see over here, as of now, here you might observe that here we are in terms of Pentiums, but you can see over here at this particular point, what you can see is that here this is in terms of 1970s, but if you observe the number of transistors which has been packed into the device is only 1000. Now as the years are kept on increasing, the packages are keeping on increasing. The number of transistors which are being packed into the device is keeping on increasing. Now as you can see here, in 1970 it is what, it is only in terms of thousands, but when it comes to 2018, you might observe that it is in terms of hundreds and thousands of transistors which are being integrated into a smaller device. So as of now, the Moore's law is keeping on going, as we know that the number of transistors in a single device has to be doubled every 2 years. Okay, so there are based on this we can differentiate the integrated circuits, we can differentiate these things. And how can we differentiate? The differentiation can be done in terms of how much integration we can do into a particular device. So let me take a space over here. Let me take this space. This is a square device where its width is 1 mm and its height is 1 mm. So it is a square device. So if I can integrate 1 to 10 number of transistors into this particular device, then I can call it as what, small scale integration. Now in the same area, if I integrate 1 to 100 number of transistors, then I can call it as what, medium scale integration. Keeping the area same, if I integrate 1 to 10,000 or 1000 number of transistors or 10,000 number of transistors, then we call it as what, medium scale integration. If keeping the area constant, if we are able to integrate 1 to 100 thousands of transistor, then what we can do is that, what we can call is that, we can call it as very large scale integration. In the similar fashion, if you are able to integrate hundreds of thousands of transistors into the small area what we had defined, then we can call it as what, we can call it as ultra large scale integration. Currently, as in the industry currently which is going on, the ultra large scale integration is being going on over in the current industry scenario. Okay, so how actually this is all about the what we can say is that how actually the transistors evolution has been taken over all these periods of time. Why people went for HDLs? That is a big question mark now. See, as you can see over here, the area is becoming same, the area is being constant, but whereas the number of transistors which we are integrating, that is being increased. You can call the increase what we can observe over here, the increase is in terms of what? It is in terms of exponential format. As we saw in Moore's diagram, what we had seen, the graph was as Intel 4004 was here, and the graph went drastically something like this. Initially, how actually they were testing, once the design is ready, it has to be tested before leaving into the market. Without testing, there will be a loss, right? So how actually the things were tested? This is the format. So this particular testing, even you people have done in your laboratories, like analog circuits laboratories or electronic devices laboratories, by taking into some chips and then some resistors and then capacitors and rigging up the circuit, and you are able to check the functionality of that particular design, whether it is going to work properly or not. In the similar fashion, when small scale integration was there, where the testing was done in terms of breadboards, all those transistors were kept on these particular types of breadboards, and then what they used to do, they used to check the devices whether the functionality of the particular design is going to work properly or not. That is being tested. Now once this thing is ready, okay, if you take only 1 to 10 number of transistors, we can easily rig up into this particular breadboards, and then we can test the functionality of that design. But when we started increasing in the medium scale, it is in terms of thousands. Then what they thought, the breadboard design was only feasible for what? It is only feasible for 1 to 100 number of transistors. Okay. Now, as the number of transistors went on increasing, what the designers thought, the complexity is also getting increased. Once the complexity is increased, the number of transistors is getting increased, the transistor is getting increased, then this breadboard is not feasible, because it becomes what? It becomes very complex. What it might be confusing where actually they need to connect and all those things. It is not a one-man job. So taking this as a scenario, what they had done is that we need to automate the things. Okay, so in order to automate, so what the designers felt that there is a need of automation, and they called it as what? Computer aided design techniques. So they started using in the similar fashion, as we can see, even the Fortran, Pascal, and then C were evolving at that time. Okay, by using those as the base, they wanted their own language. So they took use of these computer aided design techniques, and then they started what? Their own language called HDLs. As we know that in terms of 1970s and then 1960s, the Fortran was very much used language, and we know that, and even the C was introduced in 1960s and then 1970s, and we know that C is mother of all the languages, because most of the languages which have been there, they are almost similar to C, and C is almost easy to understand, and then easy to understandable programming language. So they did not go for these languages. The designers, what they felt was, we need some standard in order to design digital circuits, and So in order to define their own language, they named it as what? Hardware description languages. So when it comes to hardware description languages, so there are basically two types. One is what? One is Verilog HDL, which is you are going to study from this particular course, and one more is what? And one more is VHDL. Okay, so both the programming languages are similar, but there are some syntaxes which differ in terms of Verilog HDL and then VHDL. But most widely used is this Verilog HDL. So why not VHDL and then why Verilog HDL? That we will see in the further classes, where when we are studying in terms of trends which are going on in terms of Verilog HDL, then we will come to know that this is very much useful when it is compared with what? And it is compared with VHDL. So when actually it got originated, Verilog HDL originated at what? 1983. So in 1983, Gateway Design Automation. So this is a company which is based on US. So these people started using this Verilog HDL. So again, when they started inventing these things, so when they started using Verilog HDL, again when the testing was need to be done, again it has to be done in terms of manually. So again what they thought, this is not feasible at all. What is the use of having this particular program, and again we need to test in terms of manually. So what they did was they used this particular called logic synthesis. So this logic synthesis is almost there in all the EDA tools. So what actually this logic synthesizer will do is that it is going to convert your HDL into what? Actual hardware circuitry. So instead of going in terms of the actual manually testing, the advent of this logic synthesis in 1980s changed the way of testing dramatically. Okay, so logic synthesis pushed the HDLs into the forefront of digital designs. As we know that testing has to be, we have to get rid of this testing manually. So there should be some automation techniques. So then came what? Logic synthesis. This synthesizer, what it does, it will convert your HDL into what? It is going to convert into what? It is going to convert into actual hardware circuitry in terms of gates. Okay, so thus after this synthesizer, advent of this synthesizer, HDLs were used for simulation of system boards, interconnect buses, FPGAs, and then programmable logic arrays, all these things. So it has been used almost in all the semiconductor domains. But when it comes to the HDL programming part, what we can say is it is only meant for what? It is only meant for front end design. Okay. So what is this front end design? What is the back end design? How actually this, what are the things which are going in front end design, and what are the things which are going in back end design? All those things we will be studying in what? In the next session. That is going to be what? That is going to be your typical design flow. Okay. Till then, thank you.